What's up YouTube? In today's video we're going to cover how to make a draggable CMS slider in Webflow. As always, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date with new videos. And if you have an idea for my next tutorial, put it in the comments below. So the first thing we're going to need to do is drag in a collection list, and we'll drag that onto the page. I am going to put it inside this div called slider contain. It's 100% width of its parent, and its parent is a minimum height of 100 VH and flexbox aligned to the center to put this collection list in the center of the screen vertically. So I'm going to get this CMS from a collection I have set up called songs, and then I'm going to give this wrapper a class of wrapper, and we'll go ahead and give this list a class of list, and then we'll give the item a class of item. And then inside the item we're going to want a clickable card, so I'll drag in a link block and just put it inside the item, and then we'll give this a class of card. And so we can go ahead and set the width on the item. We'll set it using viewport width, so we'll do 30 viewport width for now. And then let's set a height on the card, and we'll do 40 viewport width, VW, for the height of the card. So that's looking pretty good. And then inside this card we'll want a background video, so I'm going to pull it from the CMS. Inside the CMS I have a video URL for each one ending in MP4, so I'm going to need to drag in an embed, and that will go inside the card right there. And then we'll give this a class of embed, and then we'll give it a width of 100% of its parent, a height of it 100% of its parent, and we'll put it inside the card. And then the next thing we need to do is actually get the video code. So all the code I use for this tutorial I'll put in the description of this video, but we'll just copy this code here for the background video embed. So we'll open up the embed, paste in the code, and then there's two places we need to replace the URL. Both of them say your URL. We'll replace it with the video URL here and at the beginning. And then once those are replaced, we can save. And now we have our video. So the video inside this field is using a class of video, and if we want to style it, we can just drag in like a background video onto the page, and then we'll give it the class of video. And then we're going to want it to be 100% width and 100% height of its parent, which is the video embed, which is this one right here. And then the card is a height of 40 viewport width, and the card should be 100% width of its parent, which is the item. The next thing we need to do is grab the list, and we'll apply a flexbox to it and center align and then justify to the left. So now we have all those cards stacked side by side. The next piece we'll want to do is actually have a title over each video. So for each video, what I'm going to do is grab the item. I'll set a minimum width of 30 viewport width, so that way it's a bit wider. Flexbox was kind of squishing it before. And then I'll set the card to relative, and then I'll drag in a div inside the card, and this will be text contain, and we're going to position it absolute over the video. So position absolute and cover height and width of its parent, and then 20 for the Z index, so that way it's on top. And then we'll use Flexbox to put the things inside to the center. We'll drag in a heading and make it an H4, and it looks like it's blue because our link text is blue, so I'll grab the link and make the color white. And then I'll get this text from the name of the song, the title. The next thing I want to do is grab this text contain and center align everything inside it, and then I'm going to use EM to add some padding on the sides. So because my body font size is viewport width, I can use EM on everything, and that's going to make everything inside it viewport width as well. So that's looking pretty good for that. The only problem, we're going to want this to, whenever we hover over a video, we're going to want it to start playing, and whenever we hover out, we're going to want it to stop playing. So I'll leave this code in the description as well. I'm going to copy this code, and we'll open up our page settings, and it's going to go in this before body tag spot. and you'll notice it's grabbing the video class. So as long as our background video has a class of video, then this should work. The only problem is we can't hover over that video embed because this text contain is on top of it. So we'll need to make the text contain not clickable. That way when we hover over, we're actually hovering over the thing underneath it. So I'll grab this class of text contain, and we're going to open up the code, and then in the header this time I'll add just a style tag, opening and closing style tag. In between them I'll put a period in the name of the class, and then I'll open up the brackets, and then in here we're just going to say pointer dash events colon the word none and then a semicolon. That's just going to make this text container not clickable, so we can actually hover over the thing underneath it. And then the item, we're going to want a little bit of padding. I'll use viewport width left and right for a tiny bit of padding on each side of the item. And then the list, I'm going to use viewport width as well, and just give a little bit of padding inside the list, so that way these items aren't directly touching the sides. So then from here, what we're going to want to do is make this draggable with a slick slider. So I have the code here. Definitely feel free to just copy it. And then we're going to open up our project. In the body closing tag section, we'll just create a new line and paste in the slick slider code. And then there's quite a few things that we can do in here. We can adjust the speed, like when we drag the slide, how long does it take it to snap into the new position. Infinite false means it will just scroll, but it'll have an end. But if we change infinite to true, then we'll be able to scroll or drag both ways, and it'll never end. Slides to show is how many slides we want to be completely in view. So like this slide hanging off to the side wouldn't count as one of the slides to show, but we probably want 3 slides always in view. So slick slider is going to set the width of these items, so that way we always have 3 in view. So we actually won't need the width on this item, but you'll see what it does when we publish. So let's just go ahead and publish this because we did a lot, and let's just test out what it looks like. So we open this up. So first of all, if we hover over a video, it plays. Hover out, it stops playing. There's videos on all sides, and then there's 3 complete slides in view, but we're getting a little bit of video on each side, and we can click and drag, and you see it snaps into place. It just kind of slides. It's pretty slow because we have the duration up so high, but it's definitely sliding into place for us, which is pretty good. And we should be able to go infinitely in either direction, and it should work fine no matter which direction we go. I might bring the duration down just a little bit because it is a little slow with the sliding. So I'll open this up, and then we'll go to the duration, and right here we maybe bring that down to like 700 for speed. And then also notice like maybe we can make this, the headings, the leading a little tighter, font size a little bit smaller, and then maybe we add a little bit more space inside the text contain, a little bit more padding, and that should look pretty good. So I think the next part that we want to do is actually have some arrows. So above this wrapper, I'm going to create a new container, and we'll call this one, if I can drag it in, let me just drag it into the page. So inside the slider contain, we'll call this one slider title, and then we'll put all the slider info in here. So maybe we'll drag in a heading, maybe make this an H2, make it say latest songs, and then we will also want arrows probably to be able to click, and that way you don't have to drag. You could do either or. So we're going to drag in a link block, and we'll give this a class of arrow, and then inside that we're going to have an image. So we can drag in the back arrow first inside the link block. We'll call this arrow underscore image and set the width using EMs, something like that. And then what we can do is grab this slider title and then use Flexbox to center align and then distribute so that the arrow's on one side, the title's on the other. And then we'll want one more arrow, so I'm actually going to duplicate this arrow. And then this one I'm going to replace the image with the forward arrow. And then we're going to want to group those arrows together, so I'll drag in a div and call these arrow contain. So this is what's going to hold both of them, so I'll drag in both the forward and back arrow into that arrow contain. That's looking pretty good. We'll give this some left margin using EMs just to space it off from each other a little bit. And then this whole title container, we can give some padding using EM just on both sides so that it kind of aligns with our slides here. And then this one I may actually bump it over a little bit. So that's looking pretty good. Maybe we reduce some of this distance a little bit, and I may even want to increase the font size some on here. And then we can also, let's see, set a weight and maybe bring the space in a little bit, negative 0.05 EM or 0.03. And then let's also add some padding top and bottom, or just bottom really, is all we need to this container. That way it's kind of not touching the slide. So that is, that works for that. So the next thing we need to do is actually make these work to where when you click on it, something happens. So if we go into our slider code, you'll notice we have slider previous as a class and slider next as a class, and they both have their own function. But we had to tell it what slider do we want this to work on, and it's going to be the slider with the slider ID here. So we'll copy that ID that says slider ID, and then we'll grab the collection list and we'll give it an ID right here of slider ID and hit enter. And then now it should work. We just need to add a class to these link blocks. So this would be slider dash prev, prev. And then this link block, we would add a combo class of slider dash next. That way when we click it, it takes us to the next slide. So let's go ahead and publish that and we'll test it out. Arrows. Let's see. Okay, so I have a little bit of an issue I'm noticing here. I think that I probably need it to set a width on this to 100% width. Let's just change this to block for now and see what happens. So with block it works. It's really weird. What I can do instead is actually just grab this container and change it to relative. And then under float, we can just make it float to the right. And then this title here, we'll do relative and float to the left. And that should hopefully do the trick. Not sure why it wasn't liking Flexbox. It's kind of strange. Okay, so we have that. It appears to be working. We can click the arrows. It's looking good. And then also I may reduce the line height in this heading to get a little bit closer to the arrows, and even make the arrows a tiny bit smaller. So something like that should be good. And I may reduce the height of this card as well. So maybe 35 viewport width for the height. And let's go ahead and preview that and see what it's looking like. Yeah, that feels better. So now we can click the arrows to go next and previous. We can click and drag. We can hover over a video to get it to play. So I think the next thing we want to do is whenever we hover over a card, we want the background color of the body to change. So like if we hover over this first card, maybe it's red. If we hover over the second card, maybe the background color of the body's blue. So we can have like 3 background colors maybe, and then we can just alternate them for all of the items in our collection list. So we'll say every first item in the list is blue, every second item in the list is red, every third item in the list is green, and then just repeat that for the fourth, fifth, and sixth items. So it'll just repeat that pattern. And the way we do that is we can use some code that is for the inf child code, and I believe that's this one right here. So I'll copy that, and we're just going to drag in an embed, and we'll just put that on the page this time. That way we can actually see what it's doing. I'm going to go ahead and put that right above the body, open up that embed, and paste my custom code. And in this case, we don't want to change the actual collection item. We want to change something inside the item. So I'm just going to delete this first part. So we're going to need to store the color we want inside this item before we can apply it to the body background color. So I'm just going to create a div in here, and I'll call this BG for background, and then dash color, and then that's going to be the name of my class. And I'm going to want it to be directly inside of the item, so it needs to be a child of the item. And then what I can do is just give it a background color for now. We'll make it this bluish color. So then from our code, we can open that up, and then we want to change the class to be item for all of these. So we're targeting the collection item because that's the class of our item. And then what we're targeting inside of it is the class BG-color for each of these. So we'll change that, and right here. So now it's saying every first item, make it this color, second, make it this color, every third background color inside the item, make it that color. And those are some really bad colors. So let's go ahead and get our actual color code right here. So I'll copy the blue hex code right here, and then open it up in here and paste in, replace that yellow with the actual color. And then the next one, you see it changed this one and it changed the fourth one because it's starting to repeat the pattern after the first three items in the collection list. So for the next one, we're going to grab this color, and I'll copy that code, open this up, and paste it in here. Perfect. And then we have one more color we need. I'll get this one here, copy it, open it here, and paste it in here. Perfect. So it changed all of them. So now we want this to be on the page so that way we can select it, but we don't want it to actually be visible. So I'm just going to set the paddings to 0 to zero it out. And now we just need the code that's actually going to, when we hover over this card, change the body background color. So that would be this code right here. I'll leave it in so we can copy it. I'll open it up in and I'll paste it in here. And then we want to target the item. So whenever we hover over the item, we're going to get the background color of the background-color div inside of it, and we're going to set that to the body. And then when we hover out of the item again, we want to change the body background color to what it was before. So I need to get that green color that it was originally. Copy that right here. Open this up, and then down here we just want to change this back to what it was. We'll save and publish, and we can test this out. So we come over here and we hover over this, changes to blue, hover out, changes back to green, hover over this one to the reddish. Each one of these have their own color. Perfecto. All right, so we may want to make this transition a little bit smoother so that way it doesn't just snap to that color. What we can do is we can grab the body, and we'll target all pages on the body. We'll add a transition, and we'll apply it only to the background color right here. And then we can add whatever easing we want, just like we were creating an interaction. If we were creating an interaction in Webflow, we can add our easing, duration, and now it should have a bit of fade whenever we hover over these different background colors. So let's see, you can hover over this, that, yep, and it fades in and out to our different colors. We can drag to change the slide, we can click change it. And one other thing we might do, the rest we can really just create Webflow interactions for. For the next part, we want, whenever we hover over one of these items, we want to gray out all the siblings and only focus on the item we're currently hovering over. So what I can do for that is actually just click on the item, and then we'll add an element trigger of mouse hover, and we'll make sure this affects the class, and we'll create an interaction of hover in, and then what we want to do is change the opacity. And then we'll make this affect the class, only siblings with this class, change the opacity to 50%, maybe 60% is fine, and we'll do out court for the easing, and then we'll do a hover out, and then let's duplicate, and this one's going to be called hover out, and change the opacity back to 100%. So now whenever we hover over an item, all the siblings sort of gray out, and actually may make that more extreme after all. Maybe we'll back this down to, I don't know, 30%. So yeah, that way we gray out all the siblings. We're hovering over the current item. One more thing I may do is make the video scale inside the card. So for that to happen, I need to set the overflow on the link on the card to overflow hidden. And then we're going to scale up the embed whenever we hover. So I'll actually make the mouse hover, apply it to the class, and now we can select the scale in. And yeah, now the video is scaling up inside. So actually we might do 1.1 for this. Ooh, that's very small. 1.2 maybe? Yeah, that's going to work. And then we can set the duration to 1. And I may even just change the easing to out sign. That way it's a little smoother what's happening. Okay, so then we can go ahead and duplicate this. And this one will be called scale out. And then we'll delete this first one, and we'll just change the scale back to 1 when we hover out. So now the video kind of scales up, and the others gray out, and that's perfect. One other thing I may do is actually grab this whole item, and I may just do a transform rotate, and just kind of rotate this a bit, just ever so slightly, to where these are more rotate it over. Maybe we'll do -1 for the degrees, and then that should do the trick. So I'm going to go ahead and preview this and see what happens. And let's go here. Alright, you hover over it, the video scales up, starts playing, the others gray out, the colors change, and we can click and drag. So I think our last step for this is really just to make it responsive. So if we go back to the page, it's stacking pretty well. We probably want to start increasing the font size on the body. So right here I may increase the font size a little bit to make it scale a little bit better. Maybe 1.8 or 1.5. So that is scaling much smoother. Even here we can increase. It's not too bad. It is getting kind of small on this breakpoint, so we may want to actually change this on this this breakpoint here, which I believe is 767. So for the slider code here, we can change our 767 breakpoint, which is portrait, to only show 2 slides instead of 3. And then on our mobile version, mobile portrait, so this is actually landscape. On our mobile portrait, we'll just show 1 slide. So let's go ahead and see what that would look like if we change the width of our item to where we're only seeing 2 on this one, so that would be about 45 for the width. And then on here, what it would look like if we were just seeing 1. So we'll increase the width a bit, and that's about 88. And we can increase the height, so the height is defined on the card. So here we'll increase the height quite a bit to make these a little nicer. And on this breakpoint, we'll also increase the height a good bit. And I may increase the font size here because it's getting a little small. So on this breakpoint, maybe I'll do 1.8 or 1.9. And then this H4, I could increase the font size quite a bit too, to where it does something like that. That's looking pretty good. So that should all be scalable all the way down, and we can go ahead and publish. I'm gonna pull this out, test it on this breakpoint. We hover, video plays, we can drag, scale, go down to our next breakpoint, this one, refresh. We can click drag, it shows every 2. And then finally our mobile breakpoint, which we can't quite preview in Chrome, so I'll actually have to open up Firefox and preview it there. Yeah, so our mobile breakpoint, now we're just sliding one slide at a time. Really, really nice. And yeah, that is looking good. So that's how to make a completely custom CMS draggable slider in Webflow. I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you.